past year or so has seen quite a bit of action in the mid-size sedan segment. Skoda and Volkswagen have stirred up the segment with the launch of the Slavia and the Virtus. Honda has silently kept the segment going with the no-nonsense City, and the Hyundai Verna. It's always been the flashy kid of the party, and now it's here in an all-new avatar. The Verna has always looked the most radical car in its segment, like it or not, and the new one follows in that tradition. The turbo variant can be identified with the obvious badges, of course, but you also get an additional vent below the bonnet, a black cabin and matching black wheels as well. You get all 4 disc brakes too, but for some reason only the front brake calipers are red. Irrespective of the variant, the new Verna looks futuristic and still has some retro cues dialed in its styling. The Hyundai Staria-inspired light bar at the front reminds me of Kit from Knight Rider. That said, when you look at the complexity of the rear with those beautiful low-set parametric taillights, or the origami-like creases on the side profile with the large wheels and broad tires filling up the wheel arches so nicely, the front end does look a bit off. The new Verna uses a completely new platform, says Hyundai. That said, the nose, it looks sharply raked, very much like a hatchback, and I think that is where the front end proportions look a bit ungainly. Furthermore, we are used to seeing a bit of the dashboard, a bit of the instrumentation binnacle. Here in this car, however, everything is a lean design, and that is why there is a bit of an emptiness. Couple that with the A-pillars, and it just looks a bit empty, and probably that is why the front end, especially from the front 3/4, doesn't look as natural to the eye as you would with any other car. But that also makes the new Verna look quite lean. And most of the onlookers these days in the traffic are going to be seated in a high chair in their crossovers or SUVs. And from that perspective, this one is going to look low-slung and sporty. The sharper nose gives it a marginally better aerodynamic efficiency of 0.30 CD versus the outgoing model's 0.31 CD. And to that effect, even the Hyundai logo now moves from the grille to the top of the bonnet. It sits flush and it's also wafer thin. This is also the lowest position I've ever seen for a headlamp on a sedan. It's quite low, and I think a lot of oncoming traffic, other road users are going to appreciate this position because it's likely to not dazzle them the way SUVs and crossovers do. And to that effect, this car also gets an auto high beam assist, which essentially will automatically switch to lower beams the moment it detects oncoming traffic. This is a part of the level 2 ADAS functions that the new Verna comes with. But unlike the Honda City's sensing ADAS technology, which only uses a camera, this one has a camera and a radar system. Over-engineered for safety? Well, I think it was high time. To that effect, the new Verna chassis uses 30% high-strength steels and 42% advanced high-strength steels. And new 3D and infrared scanning techniques are used to ensure that the body and the chassis are devoid of any imperfections. The chassis also has thicker members in the floor and around the central sections of the passenger cell. The result is that the overall weight has gone up compared to the outgoing Verna. In fact, with the newer, more stringent crash safety norms that are coming into play, most car makers in this space and around it are likely to follow a similar approach of using thicker materials, more advanced high-strength steels, etc. The Verna's standard safety features now include 6 airbags, disc brakes on all wheels for the turbo variant, electronic stability control, vehicle stability management, hill assist control, and a high-line tire pressure monitoring system. More the number of safety features, better. That's why I wouldn't say it's overpopulated with safety features, but it's commendable that the standard list of safety features is so tall and still they've managed to keep the entry price under 11 lakh rupees. So at least at the moment, for a little more money than an i20 N-Line, you could get yourself a car that has better safety features, more space, and also more power. And you also get plenty more boot space. At 528 liters, it is more spacious than the Slavia or the Virtus's boot and has a low loading lip and a wider aperture. I think of all the cars that you have in the segment, the Verna definitely feels the most premium in terms of not just the layout, but also in terms of the design, also in terms of the materials used. Now, you do get soft touch materials in some of the areas, some of the common touch points. You also get this stitching, something that will help it take on the cabin of the Honda City. what will help it surpass the cabin of the Honda City or even the Slavia and the Virtus for that matter is the kind of instrumentation that they have given. You get a 10.25-inch infotainment screen, and in typical Hyundai manner, it is very slick to operate, very easy to operate, very intuitive in terms of its layout as well. What you get here is another 10.25-inch layout. What you get are two displays, one for the speedometer, one for the tachometer, and then you get one central MID, a full color MID again, that gives you all the other additional information that you need. Now, people are going to be on the fence about this particular panel. Now, what I think about it is, this panel essentially lets you toggle using this switch between the AC controls and the infotainment controls. So what they've done is, compared to the other Hyundai cars, all the infotainment switches are now a part of this panel. It's a touch panel, and because you can toggle between the two, it sort of reduced the switchgear clutter, which I think is very good news. Ventilated seats has always been the Verna's thing. Now Hyundai's upped the game a little bit more. They've also given you heated function for the seating, especially today in this weather. It has actually come in handy. You get 3 levels of adjustment for both, and that I think is a good feature to have. You get a wireless charging pad, but you still do not get wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. You still have to run a cable for it. But all new age phones are now using a USB-C connection. But if you were to connect using the USB-C port here, the Apple CarPlay doesn't work. You still need the older USB-A port, which in today's times, I don't know why they've still done that. Another thing that Hyundai used to do with all their cabins and which we really liked was the air purification system. Even the sub 4 meter Venue gets it, but the new Verna doesn't. You do not get that air filtration system anywhere in this car. The Verna now enjoys the longest wheelbase in the category, more than even the Honda City, which up until now was the roomiest car in the segment. Look at the kind of kneeroom that I get. The foot space is brilliant too. Even the headroom is quite nice despite the receding fastback coupe-ish like roofline. So what they've done is actually scooped out more space here so that even 6-footers can get a decent amount of headroom. However, for that, they've also sort of reclined the seat a little bit more, and that is why you usually seat in a more relaxed manner, and that is how you get a slightly more headroom as well. Now, I was also worried about the glass house being a little too pinched, a little too narrow, but that's not the case. You get excellent visibility. Even the size of the rear windows is nice and wide. So visibility outside of the window, not a problem at all. The glass house feels nice and roomy. So even if there is no panoramic sunroof, the cabin, despite all the black upholstery, is a nice place to be in. It's also the widest car in the segment, making for increased shoulder room. But with only 2 headrests, this seat is safe only for 2 adults and a kid. I even had a chance to be driven around for some time, and the rear seat comfort seems good for long distance journeys. What needs improvement though is the noise insulation of the cabin. It curbs the powertrain noises quite well, but noises from the road, tires and the debris are heard loud and clear, more so at the rear, just like the Honda City. The ride quality sees an improvement though, and the Verna feels as plush as some of the more premium European cars. You may feel that 160 horsepower is a bit too much. It might just make the city driving experience of this Verna, which is ideally a city car, a bit too unnerving or, a bit too unpleasant in maybe, stop and go traffic or in slow moving traffic. But honestly, if you choose the DCT, it's not too jerky, it's not too bad even for crowded city environments. Now, I've been driving in the city all morning. There has been a bit of traffic, and there are different driving modes which can actually help you enjoy your drive better. So using this little switch, you can toggle between the Eco, Normal and Sport modes. Normal is what I've found to be very nice. The Eco, it's a bit too dull for my liking. And Normal is where the DCT also performs quite well. It shifts up quite quickly. So in terms of fuel economy, it should be pretty decent. And when you're shifting to the highway, just the way I did, you can either stick to Normal or you can even shift to Sport mode. It's raining pretty heavily as well. There was a curve in the road right now. My hands are barely on the steering just for safety's sake. The steering is moving on its own. The visibility conditions aren't too great, and still the ADAS is working as expected. This is the advantage of having a camera plus a radar. It's able to read the lane markings quite nicely even in these low visibility conditions, and it's able to maintain the lane properly. So this is an ADAS working very well even in the Indian conditions. You also get adaptive cruise control, which out on the highway here is also working quite well, even in these conditions. The cruise control is obviously the adaptive type. Now that you have ADAS level 2, you cannot turn off the adaptive bit, meaning that every time you engage cruise control, it will automatically adjust the speed of the vehicle or the set speed according to the vehicle in front of it. You can, however, make changes to the distance. You get 4 levels of adjustment for the distance, 1 being the least, 4 being the highest or the longest distance between yourself and the vehicle in front of you. You get 4 levels of adjustability. I am right now on distance level 3, which is safe for a highway speed of about 100 kilometers an hour. So does this car feel like a 160 horsepower car? Well, in a nutshell, it does. The downside is, to a few people, there is not too much drama associated with it. And when I say no drama, there's not too much sound coming off the engine. It's a humble 4-cylinder engine. But for where it stands, the 1.5 turbo, it is pretty silent. The cabin is pretty silent. So no drama or no oral drama there. In terms of the acceleration, the DCT, the electronics, they ensure that they keep things tidy even under hard acceleration. You don't feel any unnerving torque steer. You don't feel any annoying torque steer when you're maybe coming off a bend and going a little early on the throttle. So the power is very nicely, in a very linear manner, laid down to the road. So that's another plus. Add to that a suspension that has been given a very nice supple tuning. Now, we haven't really subjected this car to very bad roads. We have had a few broken patches early in the morning in the city, and out here on this new highway, the surface is beautiful, but there are a few undulations, there are a few joints in the road, and it's just gliding over all of that. It doesn't bob at all. It takes over all these undulations quite well, and with modern technology, it also ensures that the composure, the body roll is quite well controlled. Add to that a steering that has been very well tuned too, and well, you have a car that feels really nice. It feels very luxury car-like, very premium in that sense. With sport mode engaged, the Verna claims to sprint from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 8.1 seconds. And even in the wet, our test car could put power down cleanly without the electronics kicking in and ruining the fun. The ground clearance of this car is between 165 to 170 millimeters. They aren't giving us an exact figure. So that's sort of comparable to the competition. But you also have a longer wheelbase on this. So on maybe taller speed humps, you have to be a little careful. You don't want to brush that underbelly often. But around winding roads, it doesn't feel overtly tall like some of you complained about the Slavia or the Virtus. It maintains its composure much better. It feels more curve hugging in that sense. And that's again a good feeling to have. So if you are in a sporty bent of mind and you want a sportier sedan, and that is why you're maybe choosing between this and the 150 horsepower versions of the Virtus or the Slavia, I think the Verna as an overall package will be a better driver's package for the kind of steering, suspension and power delivery that it offers. What this engine doesn't get, however, is a cylinder deactivation tech that you get on the Europeans. How that affects the fuel economy of this versus those is something that remains to be seen with the road test. However, Hyundai is claiming best-in-class efficiency. In fact, they are also claiming a higher efficiency for the DCT compared to the manual. On the turbo variant, you also get rear disc brakes, so the braking overall is quite nice. The feel of the brake pedal is nice and progressive. It's very confident. It's not too grabby despite having 4 disc brakes, and that's a feeling that I like. What I also like is the engine braking assistance that you get from the DCT. It's actually quite good. Even if you are in normal mode, the way it downshifts when you're braking, it's actually quite nice. Nothing gets too jerky. So the overall tuning of the brakes plus the gearbox is something that I'm really impressed with. Even in the wet weather, the braking felt confident and the car never seemed to lose its composure. The 1.5 naturally aspirated petrol is again a familiar motor. We have already sampled it with a few other Hyundai cars. 115 PS of power also makes it fairly powerful. There's also a good amount of torque that is available on tap. Now, of course, it doesn't feel as instantaneous as the turbo, where the 253 Newton meters of torque is available from as low as 1500 RPM. This one takes a while to build up that torque. It's naturally aspirated, so it needs to rev slightly higher to get there. However, it feels pretty adequate for most of your city and highway driving chores that you will subject this car to on a daily basis. The CVT, which Hyundai likes to call IVT, is also a nicely tuned transmission. You will not really feel that rubber band effect too often. There are only 2 scenarios where I have felt it on this particular drive. especially out on the highway. If you're in the normal mode, when you want to pull overtakes at highway speeds, at triple digit speeds, that's the only place where the engine does rev a little higher. There you can feel a little bit of that rubber band effect kicking in. Similarly, when you are in sport mode, there again it tends to rev slightly higher before selecting the next ratio, and that is where again you will feel a bit of that rubber band effect. But if you're driving in the city or simply just cruising on the highway and pulling overtakes at maybe 80-90 kilometers an hour, no problem at all. We didn't get a chance to drive the manuals, but this engine isn't as rev happy as the Honda City, and the power seems to taper off beyond 5000 RPM. The refinement levels are comparable though. Should you take manual control of the IVT or the CVT, there are 8 ratios to choose from, but the automatic mode works best. Both these engines are geared to cruise comfortably at 100 km an hour with the engine speeds barely touching 2000 RPM. But Hyundai's petrol engines are known to be thirsty, and we expect the 1.5 to return between 14 to 16 km to a litre, and the 1.5 turbo to manage 16 to 17 km per litre overall. Now, when Hyundai transitioned from the 4th generation to the 5th generation Verna, we saw a big improvement in terms of high-speed stability. The wallowy feel of the Verna at highway speeds was eradicated to a big extent. Getting that platform from the Elantra certainly helped that car. Now, this one goes a notch further. The high-speed stability is actually quite good. So, whether you're choosing the turbo or the 1.5, the top-end variants are equipped with the 205 section tires. So, overall high-speed stability with this kind of suspension setup, the broad tires, etc., is actually quite good. When you're inside the cabin, it's a far nicer experience than what you see from the outside, because with this low-end instrumentation and this slim and A-pillar, the visibility, the aperture that you get is excellent. Beautiful visibility. You get good cornering visibility as well. The wing mirrors, they're not too big. They are nice and sharp. They're a little wide, but not too large. There is a bit of wind noise coming off them, but they give you a good visibility in your mirrors as well. And you will also see these exclamation marks on both the mirrors. That's basically the blind spot assist. So every time someone is in your blind spot, like there is a car right now, and it immediately tells me that there is someone in the blind spot. Of course, in India, there's always someone in your blind spot. So those lights keep flashing quite often. They work overtime. But yeah, the overall visibility is quite good. In terms of the driving position, getting a good position is not a problem at all. You get electrical adjustments for the driver's seat on the top-end variants of both the turbo as well as the NA. However, these electrical adjustments are only for recline and reach, not for height adjustment. You get regular mechanical lever where you can adjust the height. So just like we saw on the AC controls or that touch panel, things that are often used are given more priority in terms of fine-tuning. Things that are not used often are given the back seat. That is the reason why that height adjustment is still an old school lever, whereas you get more convenience for the reach and recline. So overall, the in-cabin experience of this car is much better than what you have on the outside, probably looking at that front end. Though the new Verna is a nice car to drive or be driven in, there's no doubt that many buyers in this price bracket will still gravitate towards the more practical options like the Creta. But those who still love sedans have a great alternative in the new Verna when compared to some already well-established options like the Slavia, the Virtus and the City. Hyundai hopes to double the sales of the Verna with the new model, targeting around 3,000 units a month. So is it game over for the competition? Not really. They all have their strengths. But the Verna is finally a spacious car now and has advanced safety features too, and continues to have superior creature comforts and class-leading power figures as well, all of which could help it surpass the competition.